Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for an author's afternoon in the locker room. I'm Alan Locher. Today, we have three remarkable authors stopping by to tell us about their books. Two of them are first-time authors, and one is an accomplished novelist whose 2023 popular novel was just released in paperback. My first guest is Tammy J. Cohen, whose first book is Text Messages to My Sons. It is a must read for anyone looking to build a deeper connection. There is no greater power than being able to find a direct and simple way to communicate knowledge, inspiration, gratitude, and love using technology. Using technology just may be the key for you. Please help me welcome to the locker room, Tammy J. Cohen. Hi, Tammy.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
How are
Thank you
you?
for having me.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And happy Passover.
Thank you. Happy Passover to you, too.
Thank you. Tell us about raising three sons and what your relationship was like with them before you went on this text messaging journey.
Well, as you know, I live in Manhattan, so raising three sons in Manhattan was definitely interesting. It had its own ups and downs because, as you know, it's not like you could just send them outside to play and send them outside to just do whatever they want. It's very much, you're more of a supervising role, and they're in school and they come home, and then what are you going to do with them? You're in an apartment. Most of us live in an apartment, so there's a limited amount of space. So it was a little bit challenging just because of that, and I had three boys. So when they started getting phones, my kids are a little older. They're 30, 28. My son's at 23. So they were kind of in between that whole where social media was crazy. I mean, it was flip phones. The technology wasn't where it is today. Let's put it that way. There wasn't this over engagement going on from technology like it is today. That wasn't the case. Social media was a newer thing. So they basically had phones when they started walking home from school, in middle school, figure 12, 13 years of age, for safety. And my text to them, when I figured out how to text, by the way, my text to them, because I didn't know what was going on, my texts to them were very much like, where are you? Where are you? What are you doing? And they'd be like, I forgot that. Like, and I'd be like, what do you mean? I'm busy. Like, you want money? What do you want? It was those kind of texts. And it wasn't more than that. It was commands, meet me here, reprimands, or reminders. That was our whole discussion. And that really started changing during the pandemic when, we were all kind of locked down. And I started realizing like I didn't like the way I was conversing with my kids. I wanted to change that conversation. I was also going through kind of a personal development growth because I realized I wasn't happy. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like the way my thoughts were going. We all have our own origin stories. And I realized I had a lot of limiting beliefs myself. So I was going through this learning, this metamorphosis, and I wanted to share it with them. I wanted to show them what I was learning, what was going on. I wanted to be accountable to them. I wanted them to know that they are worthy, because I always, said if I had somebody, my future self came to me when I was a kid and said, you're going to be fine, you're really terrific, you're worthwhile, it probably would have changed things for me. And I just said, I want to do that with my kids too. I want to tell them how extraordinary they are, and I want to inspire them, and I want them to know they're loved, and I want to share information, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So that was how it started.
That's an understatement.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. So that was how it started.
Wow. But so even though you had been using, the phone to text them, where did the idea to use technology to convey those messages you wanted to convey to them, the sharing of, the growth that you were going through?
Well, you know what? I realized that the simplest thing to do is to send a text message, because we all know how to do that, right? And let's face it, when we were young, when I was growing up, the only way your parents could talk to you is when you came home. We didn't have phones. Now, studies show in 2017, people said they were on their phone 70% of the time. Since the pandemic, it's continuously. I mean, unless when you're sleeping, you're not necessarily on your phone, but it's continuous when you're awake, and it's
Right.
becoming more and more engaging. So think about it. Everybody has their phone either in their pocket or literally in their hand. So you have the opportunity to reach your loved one anytime, where we didn't have that growing up. You had to wait till they came home. You had to wait till they were physically in a room with you. So my thing was, it's so simple because this is my mission, right? You can affect one person's life by just connecting and telling them how worthy they are. Now it's got to be, and how much they're loved. It's got to be continuous. It can't be here. It's not a one-off thing. Everybody sends texts all day. You could take 10 minutes to send a text to somebody who matters to you because you want them, you want to have that for them, you want to give them that, and they will spread it and so on. And that energy of love and gratitude, it's such high level energy that when you send it, that goes out there and you feel it, but the recipient feels it too. And I can tell you they do because my sons wrote the foreword to my book about what it means to them to get these messages, when it makes how it makes them feel bulletproof the whole day. It doesn't matter how your day goes. You know there's somebody out there who cares. So that's the simplest way to do it and the quickest and most effective way. Like I said, everybody's holding a phone. Everybody knows how to text. And for dads, I have a lot of dads who talk to me and say, you know what, I love my kids. I don't know, what do I do? I'm like, it's not hard. I have a book. It's 200 pages filled with text messages. It's all text messages. You can take any one of those messages, you can tweak it, to divide it into 10 chapters, make it your own. But what you find is when you do it, when it becomes a habit and you reach those kids every day or your loved one, it becomes a heart-centered message. You know what you're going to say because it's coming from your heart. So that's how it goes. It's really simple.
I love that. And it is simple. And, it's so interesting, too, because there's so many times, you send a text and sometimes you don't get a response. And, to respond is so easy. And that just, the response shows the receiver that you are listening, that you care, that you pay attention.
Well, it's interesting, Alan, because one of the things I say with this is when you're doing this, you're sending the message because you want to, with no expectations. I had zero expectations that my kids would respond. For sure, I don't get from them, "Mommy, I love you. You're amazing." They don't. That's not happening. I don't get that.
Right.
But you've got to reach people where they are at. Like, where are people? They're on their phone. Yeah. I own a restaurant uptown. People sit at the table. Everybody's seen this, and they're looking at their phones and they've been talking to each other. So you gotta like use what's there to reach people where they are. They're on their phones. But I never expected I had no expectations. I never thought they were going to answer, but they do. Whether they send an emoji back, a heart, or they say "love you," or they'll say "good message." Sometimes they don't answer, but that's not the point. I'm doing that for them, and that's it. And they know it. And when I move on to my next life or crossover, what are they going to miss? What are they going to miss? What I bought them when they were 12? What are they going to miss? They're going to miss that message every day. They're going to go it. That's it.
I mean, it is 17 years this May since my mother passed. If I had her voicemails or those text messages, I'd be a happy camper. I could tell you that.
I'm sorry for your loss. I am. And you know what? Like, that's what we remember. That's why pictures matter. Like your memories are triggered by certain things, and that's what you have. You have memories. So I'm like, okay, now that I have the book, I'm really happy. And I've been messaging my kids ever since. The book is basically the 2021 and 2022 text messages, but I never stop. And it's really great. They could just pull up a message anytime and look at it. And I find that I get so much out of it because they started to see me as a human being. Because I explained to them, like I shared with them, what I did wrong or how I responded to them, and I shouldn't have. But it wasn't them, it was me. I was the one who had the issue. And it's important because, kids, they absorb everything, and they don't know that you're reacting the way you are because you're not happy or because you were triggered somewhere or whatever's going on. They think they did something and it sticks with them. That's like part of the origin story, right? So we kind of have to make sure that we explain at some point. I'm not an advocate of being best friends with your kids. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being real with them. Because if you want, I grew up in a society of, the way it was is you do as I say, don't do as I do. You respect me, because I'm the parent. But truthfully, respect, love, trust, you have to give it. They understand, then they can trust you. So that's what I did, and they saw me as a human being, and that was a big thing for them, I think.
I love that. You told me backstage, like, you never intended to write a book. So who threw the idea out your way? And then, I'm sure, you needed the permission of your boys. What did they say when you came to them?
Well, this is so funny. So I was, I would tell friends and colleagues what I was doing, and they were like, "That's amazing. You should put it in a book." I'm like, "What? I don't. Why do I do that? I don't know how to write a book." And what's really interesting is I never thought to write a book. I was text messaging my kids.
Right.
So I had to figure that whole process out, like self-publishing and all that, because one thing is unless you're a real seasoned author or traditional publishing, a lot of that is really hard to get. It's just they don't think about working with somebody who's unknown, and it's a whole unknown genre. I mean, my book is written completely in text message format. It's the first book of its kind to be written this way. And so I went about it, and I Googled, and I through connections, I found a really great company, Pen for Hire, and they helped me with the editing, which I didn't know how to do. That's important. You want to put out a professional piece. I know text messages aren't written grammatically correct, but I wanted to make sure mine were, and also formatting. I don't know how to format a book. So I told my sons what I was doing, and you know what? They were like 100% go for it. They're like, don't put our names in the book. I'm like, I never put their names in the book anyway, because every message starts with "Good morning, sunshine." I send it to each son, but I don't address them as my son, because it has universal appeal. Their names aren't on it, and their picture's not on it, just my picture. On my website and in my social media and in advertising, the picture's there. But they were really supportive, to the point where even when I made a formatting choice, I gave them the options. I said, "Which format do you guys like? What do you think of this cover design?" And they were really forthright. I mean, they were like, "No, on the cover design, you need to work with a serious graphic designer. So I'm going to introduce you to one." So you remember, they're younger, so they had a different idea of how things should look, and they're very well versed in the whole online, like social, like that whole visual world, more than I am. So we really collaborated, and they were so proud. We had a book launch in November, and they were there and really supportive, and they've just been great, to the point where my oldest son, he's in consumer brands, and he's connected me with some of the brands he works with, and they've actually posted stories about the book. All their friends have purchased the book. I mean, it's like really nice. Yeah, they've been great. They've been really helpful.
And you asked them to write the foreword?
Mm-hmm. I thought that would be really kind of cool if they wrote the foreword. Because,
so what was your reaction when you first read it?
Emotional.
Yeah.
Because, like look, most people aren't sitting down and having a, in-depth conversation. I like to have conversations. I'm from that generation. We spoke.
Right.
We spoke on the phone, we spoke in person, because that's how you spoke. That's how you communicated. It's not that way. So I have never, like, where they sat down and they had and they're guys, they're not having emotional, deep conversations with me. But, when they wrote it and they put it in writing, how they felt, it made it all like come together for me. I was emotional. I was had a lot of gratitude that they were that they wanted to do this, that they felt this way, that everything I was doing wasn't just, making me feel good, that they actually felt good. I've had friends who are trying it with their kids, right? A lot of people started doing it. It's become like a movement. And I remember at times, like, parents say, my daughter loves it, and it's like lessened the tension between us. It's really great. My son's like, "Don't do this. I don't want to do this." I'm like, "It's okay. You keep sending messages, because he might not want to deal with it. It might be too much for him emotionally, but he's reading them. Trust me." And that's it. It's not so much if they want you to or not. You send it, and eventually it will have an impact. It's just some people take longer than others. So don't give up. But it's so funny, because people are telling me, I'm hearing things like men saying to me, "I wish my mother told me she loved me. I wish my mother did this with me. I've gotten messages, 'I wish you were my mother.'" I mean, heartbreaking stuff in a way, that people really feel disconnected in a lot of ways and wish they had that from somebody who they love, And it's so simple, and that's why I've been putting it out kind of like as we can do this. Let's make it a mission to find that persons that you want to do this with, because you will change their life. You will.
I mean, communication is key, in everything we do, and not everybody finds a way to do that in using their voice, but in the written form, that there is opportunity. Have you found that it's helped you in other ways?
Well, it's interesting. It's definitely, I think I've become more compassionate in a way. I think my emotions have like expanded when I started doing this. I'm less, I'm less judgmental. I really feel that. I feel that I'm less defensive, because if you're sitting there putting out love and you're sitting there being real, you realize it's not just in a message. This is how I want to be. And I want to be that
Right.
way.
You said it earlier, the energy you're putting out into the world.
Yes, and what's really interesting to me is that I'm having a lot of conversations and doing a lot of reading about this, and people who are depressed, it's because of lack of connection. It's not like they're saying, oh, health and wellness, but health and wellness, you have to have some kind of connection to actually start to be able to work on your health and wellness. Because if you're an island unto yourself, there's no connection, it's we're human beings, we're creatures of social interaction. That's why the pandemic was very difficult.
Right.
So I really believe that what you can actually, by keeping that connection and deepening it, you can actually help people, and especially with mental health month coming up, you can reach that person who's struggling, and you're just telling them you love them and that you're there for, and you want to
What
help
a
them
great book.
there. You could
What
do
a
that.
great book for Mental Health Awareness Month.
Exactly. Like there's so much more to it than just, okay, I love my kids. No, you can really use these things to reach anybody who's struggling, who's having a hard time, as well as reinforce and deepen a connection that you already have. Now, I just say why text is because it's simple and it's easy. Not everybody wants to write. You remember the messages in the lunchbox? You got the little note in the lunchbox, and like you made your day. The lunch tastes better when your mom wrote. But now everybody's not writing. They're not like so. They don't. Everybody's on a time thing. They want to go quick. And that, you can do it like you see people like this. They're with their hands, and you can shorten it. I mean, I remember when my kids first started texting me, and I didn't even know what those acronyms were. I had no idea what the text said, because I didn't know what three-letter, like they had their own
Right.
language.
Right.
I
That
didn't
is
know what
so.
it meant. But everybody's doing their thing and doing it short. I personally don't believe phones are good or evil. I don't believe they have anything. They're just neutral. It's the content, right? And unfortunately, today, most of the content online, on social media, is just either misinformation,
Mhm.
propaganda, hatred, violence. And think about it, your loved one is sitting in that stew too, and kids are definitely sitting in that stew. So what are you
Yeah.
going to do? How do you fight it? It's how do you go against it? You do the opposite. You do the opposite.
It's so true. Before I let you go, you own a restaurant on the Upper East Side,
Yes.
18,
Yes.
which
Yes.
I know is high, which I'm wearing. But my birthday's also
Have
the
my stone on
18th.
or stars on.
My birthday's also the 18th
Which month?
of October. But
October
so
18th. Wow. Okay.
yeah. So tell us about the restaurant.
Well, it's really cool. It's a very eclectic place. It's Kosher. It opened in 2010. So in New York, that's crazy because it's a very long time. We stayed open through the pandemic. My husband was actually delivering meals to all the area hospitals, especially like March, April, May of the 2020 when it was really crazy. So it kind of really got us a footprint also because he was out there in his wearing garbage bags and masks delivering meals. But we have a really great eclectic vibe, very downtown vibe, even though we're uptown. We have a wonderful sushi that we're known for our sushi, our grill, Mediterranean salads, fish. A lot of home cooking. That's what we're known for. Very casual. We have a bar and specials every night. So it's really
Well, you just told it for me.
Yeah, I told you have to come into the city. You and your husband have to be my guest.
I
That's it.
absolutely will. I absolutely will. Tammy, it's such a pleasure to meet you. I'm so glad Andrea connected us. Congratulations on the book. It's called Text Messages to My Sons, and it's available now. Thank you so
On
much.
Amazon. Thank you so much.
Amazon.com for sure.
Yes. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Alan. It was
You're
great
so
being
welcome.
your guest.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Coming up now, we have another first-time author. Enrica Ferruzzi, after 2 decades in the corporate world, defied norms, resigning for a life attuned to her core. Her journey, marked by loss and restlessness, led her to rediscover ancient healing arts. In Beads of Light, Enrica takes readers on a captivating journey of self-discovery and healing, weaving a beautiful tapestry of alignment and transformation. Please help me welcome Enrica Ferruzzi to the Locker Room. Hi, Enrica.
Hi, Alan. Hi, everyone. So nice to meet you, and so nice to hear about Tammy. I'm
so glad.
Like, lovely. Yeah.
I'm so glad. So you were pursuing a career in the travel industry, and were feeling an inner restlessness that was driven by an unexplainable longing for deeper meaning. Can you tell us about that, and what was that deeper meaning you were looking for?
Sure. Thank you. Great question. What's the meaning of everything? I started questioning everything. Well, anyways, I started in hospitality a long time ago, and I was really, really good at it. I had a wonderful career, super happy, of course, good and bad and ugly, but growth and managing people, training, traveling, amazing. The restlessness I speak about was, I call it restlessness because, many professionals labeled it as anxiety, maybe depression, going through too much stress, like overworking, of course. People know in the service industry, even if you're not in the service industry, there's just so much, it's always on. You're always, It's like an emergency room all the time. And, we become accustomed to operating in a certain way. And so sure, stress and, then working at a higher level in the corporate world was a different level of stress, more mental. So the restlessness I speak about was really more about me just learning more parts of myself. Like I have everything, I achieved everything, every step that I wanted to get to as far as my career. I have stuff, I have a great job, everything was fine, but then I'm like, something's missing. And then this began, I think always had this kind of like heavy backpack on me all the time. But then during the 2009, 2010 time frame, I was really feeling like physically manifesting this extreme reaction, restlessness. So I stopped sleeping. I ended up like going to my medical doctor and asking for help, which for me, on a self-reliance mission in life was really difficult to do, but at one point I needed help. And then
but you did the right thing by asking.
Yeah, I asked. I'm like, what do I do? I can't sleep. I'm afraid I'm going to yell at everybody at work. I work with people. I love people, but then I say I hate people. I mean, none of that was natural, so for me.
Right.
And imagine if you think I speak quickly now, I was much more accelerated. But I want to add one more thing. That same year, then my mom, who was an American citizen but lived in Italy, was diagnosed with cancer and then died within a very short amount of time. So for me, that was really the catalyst. Everything then from that period on was like I just needed to find a better way to live. Everything became meaningless. Like if I think I'm stressed about something, it's, and of course that was my process, going through anger. Why are people still, going through these diseases, these existential questions. And then through my multiple doctors, I finally found, because unfortunately that's how we grow up. We don't know anything else. I didn't have any other tools. I just went to seek help. And of course, they gave me a bunch of medicine to help me with stress, until one professional sent me to mindfulness. And that was the doorway to the rest of my life.
Wow. Well, tell me about that, and what do you call that person that they sent
Right.
you
So
to?
it was my psychiatrist, right? So after a year of going through different types of medicine, different types of medication, that I just want to clarify that I'm not saying like, oh, it's all bad. No. In that period in my life, I really needed help. I couldn't sleep, and then my mom dies, and I was in the States, and I could only see her twice. So anyway, I was going through a lot of grief, but I couldn't process properly. And also, I didn't have any tools.
Grief is, something that affects.
Brutal.
It's brutal,
Mhm.
and I just had mentioned to Tammy, I lost my mom 17 years ago, in next month, to cancer as well, and it's a brutal,
Right. Also because I was, at that time, my whole family is in Italy, and even though I was in a relationship, I was alone. Everything was falling apart. So I've always been driven. My work was my only, that's all there was. I worked, and then I worked some more, and then maybe I went to the gym and then worked again. So that was my whole life. And so when my psychiatrist said, I think you're ready for, slowing down, I said, what? I don't know what that means. And so mindfulness for me was so foreign. And then when I started practicing, of course, there's many, many different kinds of mindfulness, right? So, from the MBSR training, and then I walked into, when I was in the DC area working for corporate headquarters, I walked into a Qigong studio. And that's, that form of meditation, so dynamic movement and learning about energy principles and energy and spiritual bodies, and how we evolve. So internal alchemy was so familiar to me that I don't even know how to explain it. Like intellectually, it doesn't make any sense, but I'm like, oh, I know this stuff. Like, this is what resonates with me. This, I can understand myself a little bit better through practicing. So, and I've never experienced that level of quietness and stillness, and I could really be empty of thinking through movement. And so that was what worked for me. And then of course I dove in, and I just learned as much as I could, being always, a researcher, but practicing was what I needed to do. And so practicing different forms of energy cultivation, energy purification, practices and teachings, then I just knew that's all I wanted to do. Like, nothing else mattered. And I mean, at this point, I'm working at headquarters in global operations. I got to where I wanted to get to. And then I tell my family in Italy, my dad, so I think I'm going to resign. And what are you going to do? I don't know. I will see. And so, that's like, I mean, they still think I'm crazy, probably. I don't know.
That must have brought you peace as well, coming to that realization.
Yes.
Not only coming to the realization of leaving your job, but the realization, you were struggling for so long, and then all of this helped calm you down. What was it in all that you were learning, hearing from these spiritual teachers or mentors, that guided you to want to put it, pen to paper and write a book about this?
Right. Yeah. So great question. Thank you. I've always wanted to write, and I struggled with my expression. And mind you, like, I was leader of teams and trainer and managed teams, and in Mexico. So like in a third language, as well as the United States. So but I've always had this like ancient trauma of like not being able to communicate well, even though I did. And so I had this, I've always wanted to write, and I've always written, but like in secret, like nothing, I'm just journaling or whatever.
A closet
And
writer.
yes, seriously. And so then in this last couple of years, a lot of things had shifted. I returned back to Italy because my work is mostly remote. And so I came to be closer to my dad. And so I live about an hour north of Rome. It's fantastic. In a little village in the middle of the countryside, it's so nice.
One
So
of my
different.
favorite countries.
Oh, thank you.
I was there for Thanksgiving in Milan.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
So how did it come about? So first of all, I've always been a teacher. So as I learned something, then I had to, I was the trainer at work, and even without wanting to get there, my leaders were like, okay, Enrica, teach these people. And same when I started my practice, learning different forms of Qigong, and I've been trained in Sando Qigong, which is rooted in the ancient Korean tradition and Japanese tradition. Then I began to, learn how to be an instructor and teach it. And so then my experiences of how I process information through the mind of the body, how to purify our energy systems, how to connect with our higher as in multidimensional selves, our guides, whatever people want to call them, our helpers. These are my experiences. So that's what I felt like last year was, in 3 months, I completed the book. It just came out like, wow, baby, like this, here you go. And it was ready.
Wow, in 3 months. Prior to you being introduced to mindfulness, was it in your world at all?
So not the practices, no, I had never experienced practices of meditation, of stillness, of learning how to quiet the mind in this way. I just knew that physical movement really helped me relieve stress, but in an obsessive, purely physical way, such as, I could go run my bike for hours or go to the gym and lift weights, and I looked really fit and everything, but inside I was dying, and so no, I was not exposed to that, but I had always been, and my mom and I had that connection, spiritual connection, very strong. So when I was a child, I had experiences and things like that, which I shut down because it was weird, and I only had my mom as an ally in my family. So when my mom thought, oh no, who are you talking to? When I was a young kid, I'm like, nothing. And I remember that memory vividly. So I shut that down. I'm like, oh no, I'm not talking to anybody. But like I was convinced that everybody sees their helpers, like their guides, grandpa. No. No. And my mom's like, no, nobody does that. And I'm like, oh, really? And
so
anyway.
What is your hope that people take away from the book?
Yes. It's my experience, and my biggest desire is for people to look at their own story as like a myth and be like in awe of your own journey, the good, the bad, and all the ugly. And then to really to seek ways to find balance, whatever that is, for everybody so different. There is not one diet that's good for everybody. It's impossible, just like we have a different smile. So it would be so wonderful if we can come to a place where we can honestly look at ourselves and like really embrace everything. And so this for me is like one level, one dimension of alignment, is to really be that bridge between all of your minds. And I call it minds in plural because we tend to do this with the mind as in thinking. But thinking has kind of like, it's very confused, leading the life through thinking alone. So there's other senses that have been kind of dormant, such as, using these words. If I say these words, it's kind of superficial because it's overly used, like lead with the heart. but the heart mind and our body's mind have so much intelligence that's way smarter than thinking processes. So to honestly look at ourselves and like see, oh look, I do have this pattern of this. Where's how do you balance that out? And then self-care is probably the most important thing that we can, especially in the last decade, in the culture of the I call it the pandemic of urgency culture. I mean, people need to take care of themselves. Like the phone, you charge your phone, no problem. But then when you're exhausted, no, I don't have time.
That's actually really a great analogy, because my husband would argue that I charge my phone all the time. So,
Yes.
it's a great analogy. Were you open to this immediately? Were you skeptical at all of this? And for somebody who's watching right now who might be, what do you say to them?
Yes, good. Thank you. Yes, I am. I'm skeptical. I don't know, but I am very scientific too. That's why I like to do research and analysis. Like, I don't know. I need to know. So even my teacher, I would ask her. And I'm so lucky because she had a medical background before becoming a spiritual teacher. So I would ask her, what is happening in my nervous system? Why am I feeling this way? And so tell me the benefits, physically. And so that's wonderful. And that's one level. So I think what, especially people that feel like maybe, oh no, that's a little woo, whatever. It's funny for me to say those words, but it's like, there's nothing to believe in here. It's like the electromagnetic spectrum, which is one spectrum of light. We only see 1%. So if we're functioning on 1% of information. And so we tend to dismiss the invisible world, but in reality, the invisible world is walking around with us, so I feel like I like will say these words to people, and I get the raised eyebrows, and even my family is like, oh, here she goes again. And I'm like, yes, it's fantastic. I think you should really like pay attention to what's happening around you, because all the messages that, whatever you want to call it, universe, the energy, your people, I call them my people, like my guides. And they show you through things, people, messages, so that is your language. Like it speaks Alan, it speaks Enrica, it's like, this is like messages for you. She didn't get it. Okay, we'll try again. And it's such a loving, compassionate, we're the ones that are, I can't believe you did that again, so like hard on ourselves. But our heart, soul, or spirit, whatever one wants to call it, our higher version of ourselves that has all this wisdom is like, you're okay. You're gonna be okay. Look at this. You're struggling so much, there's no need. And even when we're having the most difficult time, to be our best friends instead of like, oh, this is so hideous. I am like this and that, and then list all these things, which is really interesting. Like, we do it. We're human. We have a brain, and it's used to categorizing things,
And in the book, are you giving people guidance and lessons on how to come to the place sort of where you're at today?
Absolutely. And I'm always learning. So I'm always like in that transition. Yes. So there are many, many things. And, this is accessible. Everybody can do it. It's not like only a few select trained people. No. This is our innate ability to heal. Everybody has it. And the only challenge is self-doubt, fear, and all these ideas that are not our own, that we wear as, a nice tailored suit. And so this is the ability to actually discern your own information. What is in alignment? Oh no, I tend to like go, I'm doing that again. Okay, well, so finding balance, yes, recalibrating, learning ways to purify your thinking, and then how that affects your health. Not just your mental health, emotional health, your physical health. That's like the most important thing is, I know exactly why the whole right side of my body became inflamed after, 30 years of operating in a certain way. So, becoming more aware of who we are. We're not just like the thinking processes,
Mhm.
our roles in life. I mean, we hear it, but when you feel it with your whole body, not just with thinking, your whole life changes. Because whatever's important for me is not stuff anymore. It's the experience of like, oh wow, look at that, I learned something new that I can share with others. And that's my role. I'm just trying to make a positive impact for me first. People, you come first, and then ripple effect out. So calibration in that.
That's a perfect way to end. But I want to ask you, I mean, this book came out so quickly. Do you have another
Yes.
book in you?
Yes, I do. Yes, it's a very powerful streaming coming through. So yeah, I'm really excited. But the process is beautiful how it's happening for me. So I'm really grateful.
Well, congratulations, Enrica. It's a pleasure to meet
Thank
you.
you.
I loved
Yes, you
hearing
too.
about
Thank you.
Beads of Light. Beads of Light is available as well on Amazon.com. Please pick up a
Mhm.
copy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're so
Bye.
welcome. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Our next guest is historical novelist Ruth P. Watson. She is an acclaimed writer and educator. Her popular 2023 novel, A Right Worthy Woman, is now available in paperback. This remarkable and worthy tome is based on the real-life journey of financial genius Maggie Lena Walker. Please welcome Ruth P. Watson to the Locker Room. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. I'd love to know, when did you first become aware of Maggie?
Well, I was researching Richmond, Virginia for another novel that I had written, and I ran across Maggie Lena Walker, and I thought it was Madam C.J. Walker. So I didn't know she was from Richmond. And after further research, I found out she was a banker. And she grew up in Richmond, Virginia. Jackson Ward.
That's why. Why were you researching Richmond, Virginia?
Well, in one of my other books that I wrote, Blackberry Days of Summer, they
Your
moved from
first?
my first nationally published novel.
Yeah.
We moved from fictitious Jefferson County to Richmond, Virginia. And so I had to understand what was going on in Richmond during that time period. So in looking at that, I wanted to know who was popular then, where did people go, all the what, whens, and wheres about Richmond, Virginia. And I ran across Maggie Lena Walker. And so I put her in my book, my first book. She came into the nightclub, escorted into the nightclub, and got the best seat in the house. But nobody ever asked me who was Maggie Lena Walker, or why did that make this lady always get the best seat in the house. And it's crazy, but it was like I wanted to put her in my book when I found her. And so I threw her in there. And every book afterwards, I sort of made her, she had an appearance or she was mentioned in some way. And
it's like Easter eggs, they call them online, when you give little clues and things like that. So you dropped her in everywhere.
Yeah, I did. And the strange thing about it is she kept haunting me. It's like, okay, where's my time? When is it my time? And then I wrote a book, and Simon & Schuster denied the book. They said, no, I don't want that book. But I want to know about a character that you have in this book, Maggie Lena Walker. A light went off. And so my agent said, and she said, well, I'll get back with Ruth and let's see about this character. And my agent said, Ruth, is this a real character? The editors want to know. I said, yeah, she is a real character. She's a real person. And they said, well, can you write her story. We want to know more about her. And I said, really? I was sort of mad, Alan. I really didn't want to do that. I was like, what? Are they kidding me? I want you to buy this book that I just sent you. But they decided they wanted to know about Maggie Lena Walker, and I accepted the challenge. And I wrote this.
Wow. So, because one of my questions was going to be, what was it about her that you wanted to tell the story? But it was the editor that really wanted you to tell her story.
Yeah. Well, she kept showing up, so she obviously was haunting me.
Yeah.
I mean, she we were just talking to Enrica about, spiritual guides and things around us that direct us and help keep us balanced. Well, I believe Miss Maggie's spirit is around me. So she wanted this book to be written about her. And obviously the spirit and the universe obeyed, because Simon and Schuster wanted it as well. So did I.
Well, and Maggie was really on your shoulder because she kept, telling you to put her in each book. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, wow. So for those that don't know, enlighten us on who she is.
Maggie Lena Walker is the first female to charter a bank in America. She happens to be African American because her father was white, her mother was black, was a slave. So, but she not only was the only chartered a bank in Richmond, Virginia, she was also the first female on Wall Street. And an article was written about her in 1927 by Forbes magazine. As a matter of fact, they put her on the cover of Forbes magazine. And when you ask people in a room of 200 or 300 people, have you ever heard of Maggie Lena Walker? You might find 2 people. Most people don't know who she is or what she did for this country, or certainly for African Americans. Nobody knows. They for some reason, there are a select few that do know about her, but there's about 95% of the population that know nothing about her. And that includes librarians and people who are around books all the time. They don't know anything about Maggie Lena Walker. And so excuse me.
How did you start to learn more about her?
Well, what I did is, when I said, wait a minute, banker? I mean, in the day and time was during the Jim Crow era.
Yeah.
How could we not know this in our history? I'm from Virginia. We had Virginia history. I never heard of Maggie Lena Walker. I took African American history, Black history at the time. Never heard of Maggie Lena Walker in Virginia. So I'm like, I'm sort of baffled, but also inspired to find out more about her, because I wanted to research her and find out, what did this woman do? And there's a lot of information out there. The Parks and Recreational Service in Richmond has a lot of stuff on Maggie Lena Walker and what she did in Richmond, Virginia. But her impact was felt throughout America because there was no other female doing what she did.
It's incredible. I assume Simon and Schuster was happy.
Well, I hope they are.
I love that. Tell us about the book. Is it based around her? Is it?
Yeah, it tells of her life story, starting when she was about 12 years old. But it gives you a little bit of background about her mother, her father was murdered. It starts with that, a murder, and how they had to become entrepreneurs to survive. And it also gives a little bit of the background of where her mother had been, the slave home in which her mother had been raised in, where she worked, and how that may have also had an influence on her life. Because the slave owner was a Union spy. So you got a mother who is an entrepreneur, a slave owner who is a Union spy, and then you have Maggie Lena Walker, who I feel in my heart has supernatural powers. And like when I was listening to our author before, Enrica, when she talks about the alchemist, she had alchemized herself into someone who did not fear the Jim Crow things that were going on around her, because she couldn't have been in fear to accomplish so much, especially a bank where she hired women to work in there because she wanted to get them away from domesticated types of jobs.
But also being a woman
Yes.
and doing that at that time is a huge accomplishment of its own.
Oh my God. It's a great accomplishment. And you know, she got quite a bit of adversarials in the background who was saying stuff like, oh, you act like a man, telling her husband that, you know, she was a man, and trying to embarrass her and say things in that time period to pull her down to a level that she probably wouldn't have done anything. But you had to have a serious kind of faith. I believe she was very faith grounded, so that she could do what she did in spite of all of the naysayers and the magpies that was throwing shade from every which way to sort of cause her to diminish herself and go back into what they think a woman should be, or how they felt life should be at that point.
Interesting. Where did your love of history and writing begin?
Oh God. You know something? When I was a little girl, I used to have to be quiet all the time. I had some grandparents that felt like children need to stay in their place and read. So I was given a book, or I was told to write things, and I started writing poetry. And I wish I had some of that poetry now that I used to write. And it was always my way of dealing with whatever was going on around me in my life. And I used to write poetry. And then I went off to college, and my English instructors they always would say, you know, you should be in creative writing or journalist or something, journalism. I was a science major. They kept telling me that. And you know, we always buck whatever somebody else tell us we should be. We feel like we should be something else. But I always said, one day I'm gonna write a book. And I have always said this ever since I can remember. One day I'm gonna write a book. So in 2001, I started writing a book. I decided in May 2001, I started writing a book, the first book that I wrote. It wasn't published now for a long time afterwards, but I started writing a book, editing it over and over again. It was horrible when I first wrote it. Everybody that read it was like, this is sort of boring, Ruth. You know, you need to work on this book. It really was, Alan. It was horrible. But you know, I worked.
It's good that you can say that now.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, Alan, I could say it then because I was glad that somebody said that to me before I sent it out to somebody, because you know for sure that people, your friends, always lie to you. They say, "Oh, that sounds good," but they really lying. You know, they just don't want to hurt your feelings.
They definitely don't. Having the idea to always want to write, and the person telling you to take creative writing, Was there a mentor you had that believed in your talent, that helped you on that path?
Actually, not really. Not a true mentor, but I reached out to people myself and just tried to I I love all the authors that I was reading at the time. So subliminally, they were mentors to me. Um,
Who were some of them?
at the time, well, I have eclectic reading. So I
Taste?
might read some Toni Morrison. I may read some John Steinbeck. I can go back to saying that I read short stories, James Joyce. I was always wanting to read, and of course, I like Nikki Giovanni. Nikki G's stuff is sort of spicy, and her poetry. I always have eclectic taste. I've always been that person that you can't pretty much put me in a box. It's like I'm a square trying to get into a circle, and I never fit.
Yeah.
I don't ever fit, Alan.
Well,
So
it educates you more too to be eclectic. I think getting a taste of everything.
I think so because then you're able to understand people from a different perspective. But because so many of us are tunnel visioned, so we only see things one way. I try to look at the full picture and say, and try to put myself in that person's place. Or when I'm reading an author, like, okay, what was he actually thinking? Uh, you know, what,
Hmm.
where is this coming from? What place is this coming from? What was going on in their lives at this time when they wrote that? So yeah, I sort of do that.
2001, did you say you wrote the first one?
Yes, I started the first one in 2001.
So 23 years. How would you say you've evolved as a writer?
I'm a much better writer but than I used to be. And
Does it
but
come easier today?
it does. It comes easier, but I'm always trying to improve on my abilities and my talent. And I always want to write about something that's going to affect change or make you think about your current normalcy of life. An
Mm.
example is in one of my books, I talk about the church and how the church can inflict bad perceptions on people. Although I'm very spiritual, I go to church every Sunday, but I know that the church can be a bad thing, especially when it's supposed to be a place for healing, but it becomes a place of judgmental. Um,
And division. Yeah.
yes, and division.
Yeah.
And I sort of sometimes reflect, when my mind is thinking something that come to me like that I think need to be in a I could say in a book where I couldn't say it out to people if I was
Interesting.
trying to voice my opinion.
If somebody's watching right now, what would be the one piece of advice if they wanted to follow in your footsteps to be a writer? What's the one piece of advice you would share?
I think the one piece of advice I would share is to be true to yourself. Don't try to do what somebody else does. Do what's best for you. If you're going to write about something that you feel passionate about, write about it. Um, Most people say look for your audience and see if there's somebody out there that want to read what you're writing. I tend to disagree with that. I think that there's an audience for every story. It's just finding that audience, like your show, is a place to be, some place where you can talk about what you've written and hopefully that other people will go out and buy it. Because who doesn't want to know about the first female banker in America that has yet, she's a hidden figure. And
Mhm.
and why not go and buy a right worthy woman and learn about somebody who was a pioneer, a maverick, and somebody who was fearless in America.
And inspire another young woman.
Yes, other young women and men, because
True. Yes, men as well. And
yeah,
right.
because it's so much that it's like she defied
The odds.
the odds, and everything she did was a bit taboo for that time period. That was in 1903.
Women did not run many things in 1903.
Not at all. Not at all. No.
Yeah. I mean that is wild. Do you have another book you're working on?
I do. I have a book, but haven't been doing much work on it, to be honest with you. What I've been doing is trying to figure out a way to get this story about Miss Maggie Lena Walker out there, because I think she's been dormant way too long. And it's time for people to know who she is and that she be a part of American history.
Well, you need to get, just like the movie Hidden Figures, you have to get a right worthy woman made into a motion picture.
Well, let's say from your lips to God's ears and to the universe's ears, I think that will happen. I don't know when, but I am certainly counting on it, that something will be done in her honor, because too many years have passed where nobody knows anything about Maggie Lena Walker. It's time for her to be resurrected.
Beautiful. Ruth, such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for sharing Maggie with us all, and meeting you. Continued success.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you so much. I really do.
My pleasure. Everybody, please pick up Ruth's book, A Right Worthy Woman. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Again, all books are available on Amazon. I want to thank Tammy J. Cohen, Enrica Ferruzzi, and Ruth P. Watson for joining us. Please join me next Thursday when actor William Bumiller, who played Sean McCullough on Guiding Light, if you remember Reva's Island Guy, when her plane crashed, when Annie sent her crashing down into the water. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And if you like today's episode, please click the like button. It always helps. And remember, you can stream The Locher Room on your favorite streaming platform. Just search The Locher Room. Have a great weekend, actually, everybody. I'm off to Montreal for the weekend. I will see you next week. Thanks.